Welcome to another video on Vento Nuevo's Black Swan. This video covers land movement and strategic land movement. While strategic land movement can actually also occur partially or even entirely, I suppose. It's more about the type of unit you're moving, not so much about whether or not it's moving entirely or partially across sea zones. But anyway, the rulebook calls it land movement. Well, you can see a British, I've marked it with a blue cone, a British air unit that I'm moving to Africa, and I've indicated it with blue arrows. I've indicated the path it's taking, and in total, it costs me 3 strategic movement points to move that unit to Africa. 1 to enter the sea zone, and the channel is part of the Atlantic. Then I move into another Atlantic zone. It still costs me 1 strategic movement point. And the 4 is a die roll I rolled for the German naval unit there, which fired on it. And each result of 5 or 6, in this case is 6, because the sea zone is friendly controlled for the Allies, and they're the ones moving a unit. So a 6 would have been a hit, but I rolled a 4, so that was a miss. Had the sea zone been contested, 5 would also have been a hit, but anyway, in this particular case, it still would have been a miss, obviously. Then we move on to the Southern Atlantic, which is still the Atlantic. So it still costs 1. I rolled another die for the German unit there, which was also a miss. Again, a 6 was required because the control disk shows that the sea zone is British controlled. And then we move around the Cape of Good Hope. And as you can read here, it costs +1 strategic move, which I've indicated with a die roll. So we were, up to now, it simply costs us 1, but now we're basically entering a different body of water. That's how I like to see it. And that's why we have to pay another movement point. And then we go around the Cape and we end up in the Indian Ocean, which is a different body of water. So we pay another 1, which equals the 3 I showed you before, which I put next to the unit, which totals the 3 movement points. Notice the red port, it doesn't have any influence on strategic moves, although I do believe that only the Allies can actually perform such a strategic move. But it doesn't cost anything extra. Red ports have a significance for reinforcements, which in this particular case would cost triple, and an orange port would cost double. But for strategic moves, they don't have any other influence besides what I just mentioned. So that British unit is going to end up in Cairo. I haven't moved it yet, but I've just shown you the path it's going to take. And another move I've done for the British, because again, basically you simply do all the normal land moves along with the strategic moves, and I've just indicated them for the sake of the video so you can see which ones I've actually done. An air unit flew from Tobruk to Malta, because Malta seems to be in a bit of danger, Tobruk itself as well, but I just took this decision, and well, that one can just fly there normally because air units have a move of 2, so it flew across the sea zone, landed in Malta, which is a move of 2. This is an air unit, you can't see it, but I've put it upside down to denote that I've actually moved it. What else? Well, all the Allies move their troops together, and in this particular case, the Soviets basically count as allies as well. And I've shown you all the strategic moves. The strategic moves, by the way, are limited to the number of strategic points a side has, and you can also actually indicate it here. Strategic power, well, the British had a total of 5. They used 3, as I told you, because even though it was only 1 unit, it cost them 3 movement points. The Soviets have 7, and I believe they've used 5 or something. And I've shown you the paths they're taking. Strategic moves can only occur from friendly to friendly areas. You cannot engage, which makes sense in a strategic move if you ask me. So for instance, this blue unit over here moves through Leningrad and follows this path and is going to end up in Kursk, because I didn't put any other blue arrows there, so that's where it ends up. The green one, which I've indicated with a green cone, follows this path and it ends up in Rostov. Well, you can see for yourselves. Yeah, here's another one. This one is actually an engagement. Most of these units come from Kiev and they're entering Lvov, and the whole idea is to cut off all these German units here and hopefully put them out of supply at the beginning of the German turn, and with a bit of luck keep them out of supply. And well, that would basically I guess if the Soviets managed to pull that off, it would basically signal the end of the war as early as spring 1941. But okay, so I moved several units from Kiev into Lvov, and one of them actually came from this area, and I'm also moving another one all the way around so as to shore up the front line here, because these units are actually still in supply and there is not really any way for me to well, that's not entirely true. If I actually make it, I could cut them off here in Bessarabia as well, because the Soviets bought the Blitz disc, so they would have another attack, so that would be an option as well. Yeah, well, apart from that, so the units I put upside down are the units I moved normally. The units I actually used arrows for. Not that those don't come with the game, but and normally I wouldn't use them. It's just important to remember that you're not using more strategic moves than you actually have strategic points, because that's not allowed. But other than that, there's no point in putting those cones and arrows and everything. I just wanted to show you the moves that I actually made. Well, I hope this video clears up strategic movement for you. It's also important to note, for instance, that rough terrain, this would be an example of rough terrain, by the way, and you can differentiate it by it's a bit grained or whatever you want to call it. This one is clear right next to it. Tanks have to pay 2 movement points to enter a rough terrain area, and so keep that in mind when you're moving units. You might think, okay, I'll just move a tank two spaces, but note that for a regular move you actually have to pay 2 movement points, so then in total it would actually cost 3. If you wanted to make a move of 2, assuming that the other terrain is clear, and that is of course not possible because the tank is limited to 2 movement points, and as is an aircraft, by the way, an aircraft can be transported by sea, and in many cases actually will have to be if you want to use more than 2 movement points. But anyway, the point I was making about the tank is don't forget that it's easy to forget, and then you will have to use a strategic move to move that tank if part of the move is a strategic area and you want to move it beyond it. Regular movement points are clearly listed in the rulebook, but artillery and infantry have a move of 1. Forts cannot be moved once placed. Tanks have a move of 2, and airborne as well. If you move them as airborne, if you don't move them as such, then they're regular infantry. And it's also important to note that naval units are not moved during this phase, because the naval movement phase already happens before the land movement phase. Well, I hope this video covers the strategic movement and normal land movement for you. And the next video will be on land combat. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.